I know I want the gameplay to focus on farming and building, but beyond that, I don't have a concrete plan yet. My approach is to play the game myself and gradually add features that feel necessary for its progression. So let's begin by creating a new game. At the start, the player will spawn in the center of the map with full health and an empty inventory. The player can remain idle without anything happening. To encourage action and resource gathering, I've added a timer. Once it reaches 0, the player will begin taking damage over time and will eventually die if they don't act. I am going to make this timer as the hunger and thirst bar. So the player needs to eat and drink to be able to survive. So I guess the game will be a survival farming game then. But where will the player get food and water? That's where resource collection comes in. We'll need to add food items to the environment. The first item I'm introducing will be something that naturally grows in the wild and can provide both food and hydration, berries. To support this, I've also created berry bushes. This not only gives the player essential resources, but also adds more variety to the game's environment. Eating a berry restores a small amount of both hunger and thirst. It's not a lot, but it might be just enough to help the player survive the night. With the berry bushes added, the player now has an early game food source to help them survive. I also added a mechanic where the player's health gradually regenerates if both the hunger and thirst bars are above 60%. This gives players a way to recover health during the early stages of the game. I am already moving on the next item to add, but then I encountered an error. This script is for loading the saved data to the game. I already checked every script connected to this, but I could not find any error. It almost made me cry, until finally I found it. It is the system.serializable. I thought this code is to be able to see the class on the editor only. It took me hours to figure this out. Now that the berry system is done, it's time to add another key feature. This new addition will unlock a whole range of items for the player. Since this is a farming game, we need a way for players to access farming plots and seeds. Instead of implementing a traditional crafting system for farming tools and supplies, I decided to go with a different approach. An altar that acts like a store within the game, where players can purchase the items they need. The altar acts as a kind of magical vendor, offering essential farming items. But here's the twist. Unlocking more advanced items requires the player to donate or sacrifice materials to the altar. Each offering levels it up, expanding the inventory of items available. I'm not entirely sure if this system is better than crafting, but I think it gives a mystical vibe on the game and encourages resource management in an interesting way. So for now, we're rolling with it. When the player first spawns into the game, the environment provides basic resources like small stones, sticks, and berries that can be picked up. Once enough stones are collected, the player can begin constructing the altar. To build it, the player simply places the small stones on the ground, and once the requirements are met, the stones transform into an altar. This altar serves multiple purposes. It acts as a hub where players can buy and sell items, as well as sacrifice materials to level it up. Selling items through the altar rewards the player with coins, which can then be used to purchase essential tools, seeds, and other resources. Since I already created a store system on this game, I just added a sacrifice interface. And with that, the altar is now complete. Now the final step is figuring out which items should be unlocked at each stage of the altar's progression. At level 1 I decided to add potato sprout and tool for digging farm plot, because we need a tool to make the farm. I also added berries and potato, since it can also be sold to the store for coins. So I tried playing the game with the store added. I adjusted some values like the hunger and thirst timer. I created a farm, and since I am farming potato, which is food, the hunger issue was already been solved. But I still need to add an item that provide a better source of water other than the berry. Then I got a crazy idea. What if rather than buying the tools on the altar, what if we also grow them? So I've added a new type of seed that can be grown into plants which produce tools used for farming additional crops. This means players will now need to grow their own tools in order to progress. I present to you the first tool-growing crop, the Yoma plant. The plant that grows to be a hoe and can be planted directly on the ground, no plot required. Its seeds are available for purchase at the altar. With the Yoma plant, players now have a way to obtain tools directly within the game. The next thing we needed is a water source, but I do not like creating a river or a body of water on the game, so we will grow it as well. So I made a water berry. This item will quench the thirst of the player, and is going to be the early game water source on the game. To make this, I changed the color of our existing berry to blue, and we have a water berry. I am getting out of ideas, so a blue berry it is. The item's effect is similar to a basic berry, but it restores more thirst than hunger. To survive in the early game, players will need both regular berries that restore more hunger and water berries that primarily restore thirst. Now that early game hunger and thirst have been resolved and players have access to farming, it's time to introduce a new layer of challenge. I'm adding a watering system for crops. Plants will now need to be watered regularly in order to grow. You'll notice that the soil appears darker when it's wet and gradually lightens over time. This visual cue signals that the plant is starting to dry out and needs care. Since watering is now essential, we'll also be introducing a new water source. After all, berries are the only water source we have right now, but we won't be able to use berries to water the crops. That would be insane. To support the new watering mechanic, I need to introduce an item that generates water and is easy to access. Since we can already grow tools, why not rely on a plant for this purpose too? Enter the pitcher plant, a unique, carnivorous species known for its pitcher-shaped leaves filled with digestive fluid used to break down prey. In our case, though, it won't contain acid. Instead, this plant will produce fresh water that players can collect and use to water their crops. I think it's a fitting and creative way to provide a renewable water source through farming. After settling on the idea of the pitcher plant as a natural water source, I went ahead and implemented it in Unity. I created a set of scripts to handle its behavior and simulate the water collection process. As you can see, the water inside the plant slowly fills up over time, giving a visual indication that it's producing usable water. Since the pitcher plants will be scattered across the map, I needed a way for players to collect and transport the water they produce. To solve this, I introduced a new item, the water bucket. This bucket serves as a simple but essential tool that allows players to gather water from the pitcher plants and carry it back to their crops. It adds a layer of resource management, encouraging players to plan their farming around the locations of nearby water sources. Since the bucket is a newly introduced tool, we need a way for players to access and use it within the game. So just like the hoe, bucket planting it is. Next, the bucket functionality. I made the bucket to be able to collect water from the pitcher plant, and it can also be used for watering the plant. One bucket can be used for one plot. I felt like it's a little bit expensive, but it's an early game watering tool, so it's supposed to be grindy on start. I think we see how it goes. When I play the game, it's kind of hard to tell if the plant is still hydrated. So I added an indicator that will tell if the plot is still moist. And since I created it on the moisture, I also included an indicator if the plants is already ready for harvest, as well as the pitcher plant. Okay, we can till the soil, plant some crop. We have a farming game now. The player can now peacefully grow and harvest crop. But not for long, because I bring back Ludius the Lude Slime to the game, or her family. These slimes can attack the player, destroy farm plots, and eat crops. On the upside, they drop seeds when defeated, making them a valuable early game source of seeds. Now that there's a threat in the game, the player needs a way to protect their crops. So I'm planning to add a weapon and a fence to help fight off the slimes and keep the farm safe. Let's start by showing you the fence I created. Since early game we only have access to stick and stone as material, I added a stick fence. This item will prevent the slime from going near the farm. It will also be available on the altar. Speaking of the altar, I have updated its looks. I added a model that I made when I am learning to create character on Blender. I tried searching for this model's raw file, but I could not find it, so I can't no longer edit or change it. So this is going to be the altar's look moving forward. So let's go back on adding some defense system for the farm. Since the player have to defend itself now, we need a way to attack the slimes. So I added a punch ability to the player. This means that I have to create a punch animation on Blender. It's a bit chaotic animation, but this will do. I am still a bit confused on importing animation to Unity, so it take a lot of time for this animation, but I still managed to make something. As you can see, the player can now punch with its right hand only. Its punch looks weak. It does not do damage yet. I am kind of getting tempted to use an animation from Mixamo, but I am not going to. This is an okay animation, so we will roll with it. I also want the player to be able to use a weapon. But since this is an early game, we need a weapon that is accessible on the environment. So I decided to use the stick again. like a club, so I will be creating a club. Before that though, since I am already creating an animation for the punch, I decided to also make an animation for the club. It's like swinging a sword, but when I uploaded it on Unity, the player decided to become Michael Jackson. I can hear the hee-hee sound even though the game doesn't have a sounds yet. I do not know what went wrong here, but it eventually worked when I re-uploaded the animation again. Then I created a club on Blender. It's easy because I already created some sticks before. I just edited it to look like a club, then it's done. All I have to do is import it to Unity and add some script. And here it is, the club. I already created the animation, so I just attach the item to the player, and the player can now use a weapon. Next is adjusting the damage and some additional effect. I think the game will be truly playable now. I tried hitting the slime with the club, but I couldn't. They are so low in the ground, the club can't reach them. I can use a raycast here instead of collider. But I wanted the player to be able to hit multiple enemies. I have no idea what to do here. So I asked Sensei for an advice, and as predicted, Sensei have an answer. Physics overlap sphere. With this knowledge, I implemented it no Unity, and it works. I also added a knockback that send the target back. It needs a little bit of adjusting, but it's working now. After some adjustment, here's how it looks like no in the game. The player can now defend itself from the slimes with a new weapon. But where will the player find this item? At first, I planned to add it on the altar, but then I thought, it is still just a stick. You know, the kind you'd stumble upon in the woods. And by chance, it's just the right shape and weight, and for some reason you feel powerful when you hold it. But it is still a stick. So, I decided to just scatter them around the map. Also, since the item is considered a weapon, it cannot damage other objects like trees and stones. Now that the weapon is finished, I think the player should also have the option to build a base. The stick fence can serve as both a fence and a wall. To create a basic early game base, I think the only other thing the player needs is a roof. Well, in the early game, we need a material that's easy to obtain and plentiful in the game world. Grass seems perfect for this. It's abundant, and I also want to give players the option to remove it if they choose. At first, I was trying to figure out what tool the player would need to collect the grass. But then I realized, it's just grass. The player can simply pluck it from the ground. So, I set it up so that the player can remove grass by pressing the crouch button, which is the control key. If the player then attacks without a tool equipped in the hotbar, the grass will be removed. I also created a grass bundle model in Blender and made it into an in-game item. Then I imported it into the game and started punching grass. Sure enough, everything worked just as I intended, just as I planned. Now I'm working on adding a grass roof, so I created another model in Blender. I'm not exactly sure how to make a realistic grass roof. It seems tricky to pull off without using a different material. I've now added the item, and here's how it looks. The player can finally build their own base. Sure, it has holes everywhere, but it's better than nothing. With that, I'll wrap up the video here. If you enjoyed it and want to support what I do, please like and subscribe. Thank you.